I never planned to delete TikTok. Like most people my age, I downloaded the app because everyone around me was using it. At first, I watched only a few short videos every evening after work. It seemed harmless. I laughed at funny clips, learned simple cooking recipes, watched travel videos, and sometimes discovered useful study tips. I told myself that spending 20 minutes on the app was a good way to relax after a busy day. Without realizing it, those 20 minutes slowly became 1 hour, then 2 hours, and sometimes even 3. I did not notice the change because it happened little by little. Every day felt almost the same, and I convinced myself that I was still in control. One Sunday evening, I looked at the screen time report on my phone for the first time in several months. The number shocked me. I had used my phone for more than 7 hours that day. Almost 4 of those hours belonged to TikTok alone. I stared at the screen because I honestly could not remember what I had watched. I remembered laughing at a few videos and saving a recipe that I never cooked, but everything else had disappeared from my memory. 4 hours had passed, and I had nothing meaningful to show for them. That was the first moment I seriously thought that I might be wasting time. The following week, I started paying attention to my daily habits. Every morning, before getting out of bed, I reached for my phone. I opened TikTok before I even brushed my teeth. While eating breakfast, I watched more videos. During lunch breaks, I watched another 20 or 30 minutes. At work, whenever I had a short break, I automatically picked up my phone without thinking. At night, I promised myself that I would watch only 5 more minutes before sleeping. Those 5 minutes almost always became another hour. I was not choosing to use my phone anymore. My hands simply knew what to do before my brain made a decision. One evening, I wanted to read a novel that had been sitting on my shelf for almost 6 months. I made tea, sat comfortably on my couch, opened the first page, and planned to spend the evening reading. Less than 5 minutes later, I heard my phone vibrate. Without thinking, I reached for it. The notification was not even important. It was only another recommendation from TikTok. I opened the app anyway. When I finally looked at the clock again, 90 minutes had passed. The tea was cold, the book was still open on the first page, and I had forgotten what I originally wanted to do. That moment made me realize how easily I could waste time without even noticing it. A few days later, I watched an interview with a psychologist discussing attention and digital habits. She explained that many people no longer became bored because their phones filled every empty moment. While waiting for a bus, standing in line at a supermarket, or sitting alone at a cafe, they immediately reached for their screens. She suggested trying a simple experiment. Delete the app for 30 days and observe what changes. The idea stayed in my mind all evening. At first, I thought it sounded impossible. Then I realized that my reaction itself was probably the strongest reason to try. The next morning, I looked at the TikTok icon on my phone for almost a full minute. It felt strangely difficult to press one small button. My brain immediately began making excuses. I told myself that I might miss important trends. I might lose contact with creators I enjoyed. Maybe I should wait until next month. Maybe 30 days was too long. Eventually, I stopped listening to those excuses. I deleted the app. The icon disappeared from my screen, and the challenge officially began. The first day felt surprisingly uncomfortable. Every few minutes, I automatically unlocked my phone and searched for the app before remembering that it was gone. Sometimes I opened another social media app instead, only to realize I was doing exactly the same thing. I was not looking for information. I was simply looking for something to fill the silence. Whenever I found myself reaching for my phone, I asked one simple question. Why am I doing this right now? Most of the time, I did not have a good answer. By the third day, I noticed something else. I felt bored much more often. While waiting for coffee, sitting on the train, or eating lunch alone, I suddenly had nothing to look at. At first, I hated the feeling. The minutes seemed much longer than before. Then I began noticing things that I had ignored for months. I watched people talking instead of staring at screens. I paid attention to the buildings outside the train window. I listened to conversations around me without trying to. My world suddenly felt much quieter. During the first week, evenings became the hardest part of the challenge. After dinner, I naturally wanted to use my phone. Instead, I looked around my apartment trying to find something else to do. I remembered the unfinished novel that had been waiting on my shelf. This time, I sat down without my phone nearby. I read one chapter, then another. Before I realized it, I had finished almost 100 pages. I had forgotten how enjoyable reading books could be when my attention was not interrupted every few minutes. Around the 10th day, I noticed another unexpected change. I started sleeping better. Before deleting TikTok, I usually stayed awake much later than planned because I kept telling myself to watch one more video. Now I went to bed earlier because there was nothing pulling my attention late at night. Falling asleep became easier, and waking up in the morning no longer felt as difficult. I had not expected such a simple change to affect my sleep so much. My work also began to improve. I had always believed I was good at multitasking. I often answered emails while checking messages and watching short videos during breaks. After removing TikTok, I realized that multitasking mostly meant constantly interrupting myself. Without the habit of checking my phone every few minutes, I could focus again. Tasks that previously required 2 hours sometimes finished in little more than 1. I made fewer careless mistakes, and I felt less mentally tired by the end of the day. Around the middle of the challenge, one of my friends asked why I was taking so long to respond to videos he shared. I explained that I had deleted the app for 30 days because I wanted to save time and understand how much it affected my daily life. He laughed at first because he thought I was exaggerating. Then he checked his own screen time and became quiet. His numbers looked very similar to mine before the challenge. A week later, he decided to try the same experiment. The biggest surprise came during weekends. Before, I often wondered where my free time had gone. Saturday mornings quickly became Saturday evenings, and I always felt that I had accomplished very little. Without TikTok, weekends suddenly became much longer. I cleaned my apartment more carefully, cooked meals instead of ordering delivery, called my parents more often, and even started learning basic photography. None of these activities were extraordinary, but together they made my weekends feel meaningful again. There were still difficult moments. Sometimes I felt curious about what I was missing. Friends talked about popular videos or funny trends that I had never seen. Occasionally, I almost downloaded the app again just to check something quickly. Each time, I reminded myself why I had started. My goal was not to prove that TikTok was bad. My goal was to understand my own habits. If I returned too early, I would never know what 30 full days could teach me. During the 4th week, I realized that I was using my phone much less overall. Deleting one app had changed the way I interacted with my entire device. Instead of unlocking my phone automatically, I now picked it up only when I actually needed something. I answered messages, checked maps, read emails, or called someone. Then I put it away. The phone slowly became a tool again, instead of a constant source of entertainment. One evening, I looked at the bookshelf in my living room. During the 30-day challenge, I had finished 4 books. Before that, I had completed only 2 books during the entire previous year. The difference was not because I suddenly became a faster reader. I simply stopped giving away several hours every day to endless scrolling. Those hours had always existed. I had just never noticed where they disappeared. On the 30th day, I opened my phone and looked at the empty space where TikTok used to be. I asked myself whether I wanted to download it again. Surprisingly, I did not know the answer immediately. A month earlier, I would have reinstalled it without thinking. Now I hesitated because I understood what it had been costing me. It was not only about the hours I spent watching videos. It was also about attention, focus, sleep, and the ability to enjoy quiet moments. Eventually, I decided to install the app again, but I changed several rules first. I removed all notifications. I set a daily time limit of 20 minutes. Most importantly, I promised myself never to use the app before work or after getting into bed. If I reached the daily limit, I stopped for the day. Surprisingly, those rules were much easier to follow after living without the app for a month. Looking back, deleting TikTok for 30 days did not completely change my life overnight. I did not suddenly become more successful or more productive than everyone else. However, it helped me notice something that I had ignored for years. Small habits repeated every day become powerful over time. 5 extra minutes here and 10 extra minutes there eventually become hundreds of hours each year. The opposite is also true. Reading books for 20 minutes every evening, sleeping 30 minutes earlier, or spending more time talking with family also create meaningful changes over time. People sometimes ask whether TikTok is a bad app. I honestly do not think that is the right question. The better question is whether we control the app or whether the app controls us. For some people, it is simply entertainment. For others, including me, it slowly became a habit that quietly filled every empty moment until I no longer noticed how often I used my phone. Whenever I think about that challenge now, I remember the first evening after deleting the app. I sat on my couch feeling bored because I had nothing to scroll through. At the time, boredom felt like a problem. Now I see it differently. Boredom gave my mind enough space to notice other possibilities. It encouraged me to read books, think more clearly, sleep better, and focus again on the things that actually mattered to me. 30 days without TikTok did not teach me to avoid technology. It taught me to use technology with intention. My phone is still part of my daily life, but it no longer decides how I spend my time. Every once in a while, I check my screen time report again. Whenever I see the numbers staying under control, I smile because I remember the day I finally deleted the app. It began as a simple experiment, but it became one of the most useful habits I have ever built.